This is a bonus outtake from our interview with Fluke Holland. You can hear Fluke's entire full-length episode, and you can be sure never to miss an episode of The Trap Set if you just subscribe for free on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. It seems like from the early days, you already kind of developed a pretty distinctive style of your own. You could hear a particular sound on those early Sun records where you're playing the rim of the drum kind of instead of a hi-hat, and it's a tapping kind of a sound, and then there's a tape echo, delay. How did that come about?
Well, the style that we were playing, it's like I say, it wasn't something, we didn't have a choice to play any other way. Like Carl on the guitar, or a boy, Luther Perkins on the guitar that behind Johnny Cash. Jerry Lee was a piano. It's really weird about, nobody thought anything about it back then, but even now, this many years later, and this is what's kind of strange to me, any instrument, no matter who plays it, when they touch it, the instrument even sounds different.
Right.
You know, you can like 50 guitar players pick up a guitar, and they'll all sound different. And then there wasn't all that much music being done. So it's like in my case, none of the small bands had drums. No country music had drums. The word rock and roll hadn't been thought about yet. There'd been some music that was called rock and roll later, but nobody would give it that name. It was like there was country music, hillbilly music, jazz, pop, whatever, but rock and roll hadn't been mentioned. And when we was all the guys at Sun, whatever anybody, like Charlie Rich playing the piano, I mean, when he touched it, it was just totally a different sound. And it wasn't anything that anybody was doing to be like somebody else, because there wasn't all that many now. Now it is nearly impossible for somebody to play an instrument that don't sound like something we've heard somebody else do. But back then, see, we had the advantage, wasn't all that, and especially in my case on drums, whatever I had done on drums, or it would have been different.
Right.
So I was lucky in a sense that I wasn't trying to play like anybody else. I was just playing the only way I knew to do it.
Tell me about what you remember about that $1 Million Quartet session.
The $1 Million Quartet session was another thing that happened that nobody ever thought about. Fact is, don't let me forget, I'll give you one, because Ron wrote a song kind of about it. It's just a saying, but we got it on record, and I want you to take it and play it. But what happened, the reason we were there, we was back in Memphis to record the release after Blue Suede Shoes, and it was Matchbox. And the reason Jerry Lee Lewis was there, Sam had hired him to play piano with us, and Carl and his two brothers and I. So we were back in Memphis on December 4th or whatever it was, in 56. Now, we got there and we started doing the song, and just out of the clear blue sky, nobody knew they were coming by, but John heard we were in town, and he just dropped by to say hello, and Elvis did the same thing, because we'd all met the year before and toured together, and they heard we were in town, and they just dropped by to say hello. Well, when they did, it kind of turned into a jam session. You've seen the big famous picture of all of them. Elvis is at the piano. Mm-hmm. Elvis told Jerry Lee, he said, "Get up, let me sit down and play the piano a while." So they did. Now, there's two things that happened that is the reason we're talking about it now. If they hadn't happened, nobody would have known about it. But Jack Clement, he didn't think anything about it. He thought it'll be over in a minute and those guys will leave. And that did happen, but he just decided he wanted a sandwich, so he just turned the machines on, reel-to-reel recorders, turned them on and walked next door to the Taylor Cafe. It was a little restaurant then. And Elvis sat in and they started singing songs. We started playing. Nobody knew what they was going to do next. Sam Phillips did think to call a photographer. So he called a photographer, made the famous pictures right up there. And if those two things hadn't happened, if they'd have just come by and said hello, sat down, sang a few songs, and left, if it wouldn't have been on tape, if Jack hadn't have left the machine running, and it wouldn't have been a picture if Sam hadn't thought. So that whole thing was another, like, fluke thing. Nobody even had any idea it was going to happen. And then when it did happen, though, nobody thought anything about it then. Now, when I do appearances, somebody asks me, I work with this company, Cambria. It's CambriaUSA.com. It's a countertop company out of Minnesota, and the guy that owns that is a big Johnny Cash fan, and I work for him all over the world almost, doing events for dealers. And somebody will ask me, what was it like to be in that session that night? Because now it's a big deal. And I kind of make a joke out of it. I didn't think anything about it. The only thing that I was concerned about that night was it was the time that Sam Phillips was having to keep time and pay union scale. And union scale was $11. That's what I was thinking about.
For a 3-hour session?
Yeah, and they said, what was it like to be in the studio with all those big stars? I said, hey, there were no big stars there that night. They became big stars later. Now, later, when they did become big stars, and a guy named John Cassette made a Broadway play out of it.
Right.
Now it's become one of the most famous sessions of all time. And I joke about it again. I said, I kidded Sam Phillips after the boys became big stars. And I said, Sam, if you had really known what you was doing, thought about it, you'd have had the photographer to pan over about 3 feet. I would have been in the pictures and it would have been famous. But Sam was a nice guy. Every time I say that to him, he'd laugh. But that was another thing that just happened. Nobody thought anything about it. I guess because I've been asked so many questions, especially about Johnny Cash, and I think probably the question that I've been asked more than any about Johnny Cash is, why did Johnny wear black? And the fact is, this is the correct answer to it. The fact that I think I heard him say it one time, or might have put it in a book. We didn't have all that many clothes, and you could leave on a tour with a pair of black pants and a black shirt, and it'd still be looking clean when the tour was over.
Probably didn't smell clean, though.
Yeah, so the reason he wore black is just it didn't show dirt as much. And I guess I'm asked that question more than any.